News at 10. A tragedy that could and should have been prevented. The public inquiry into the Southport attack finds catastrophic failures. The chair placed considerable blame with the teenage killer's parents, saying the murders of 3 young girls would not have happened if they had reported the full extent of what they knew. He also laid blame at multiple agencies for not responding to the danger he posed.
I have no doubt that if appropriate procedures had been in place, this dreadful event would not have happened.
The Prime Minister promised changes in honour of the victims, but just how did so many failings happen? Paul will look at exactly what went wrong, and Sarah investigates why. Also tonight, as the US blockades Iranian ports, President Trump sparks an extraordinary row with the Pope after posting and then deleting this Jesus-like image of himself.
Staff here had tell me that the floor would shake when the bombs started to fall, and they'd run to the windows to look out to see how far away those hits were so they could judge just how many patients they would get into the hospital.
Inside Iran, Emma talks to those who've suffered through the war and are living in hope of peace during a tentative wait to see if the ceasefire will hold. Rory McIlroy's back-to-back Masters win and why he had to convince his parents to be there to watch him. And
right, this is the high-tech bit. Who said science isn't glamorous, eh?
the British scientists with a hands-on approach to tackling climate change with the help of a herd of alpacas.
This is ITV News at 10 with Charlotte Hawkins.
Good evening. When little girls BB King, Alice da Silva Aguiar and Elsie Dot Stankham were murdered in Southport in 2024, there quickly came calls for a public reckoning into exactly what had gone so horribly wrong. The clear desire, justice for the victims, and to prevent the recurrence of such tragedy. But that tragedy would not have occurred in the first place if various agencies and the teenage killer's own parents had acted differently. That was the conclusion of Sir Adrian Fulford today, the chair of the Southport inquiry. He highlighted failings by the police, the Prevent programme, care teams and the school. And he said the attackers' mother and father bear considerable blame too for neglecting their moral duty to report their son's menacing behaviour. Such is the continuing trauma Axel Radicabana has caused. He's been referred to throughout this inquiry, not by name, but by the initials AR. Tonight, we will largely do the same.
The authorities managed to convict their killer, but now we know they could have caught him. Long before he took the lives of Elsie, BB and Alice, and ruined those of so many others. The stabbings at the Taylor Swift dance class 2 summers ago weren't the attackers' first signs of violence. But every warped word, every clue he'd become a killer, was overlooked.
If sensible steps had been taken by the agencies and AR's parents, this dreadful event would not have happened. It could have been, and it should have been, prevented.
His inquiry concludes that almost no one involved in the killer's life is without blame. Lancashire Constabulary, Lancashire County Council, Mental Health Services, the Prevent Counter-Terrorism programme, none of them took ownership of the risks he posed. With missed opportunities to stop him when he said he wanted to kill another pupil, when he went armed with a hockey stick to his former school, and when he was found on a bus with a knife, with countless other red flags. The failures weren't just of policy, but of parenting. By the time Axel Radicabana was waiting for a taxi to his attack, he'd already been violent towards his family. His parents knew he had knives, like the one he was carrying here, but didn't report their concerns. They could have stopped their son from killing and injuring so many daughters.
AR's parents failed in their responsibility to society. He had not left the house for 2 years except when armed or seeking to cause harm, yet they allowed him to leave on that day, knowing he was likely carrying a weapon.
There will always be bad or inadequate parents. That's why we have these state agencies. They're supposed to be there to step in.
The findings of this inquiry are disturbing and frankly depressing. Our calls for organisational and individual accountability must be heard.
Some of the families only gave evidence to the inquiry in the hope there'd be change. Today the government promised to enact it.
I want to put on record in this House my total determination to make the changes across the entire state that are so clearly necessary to honour the victims, the injured and the families of Southport.
Action now cannot compensate for inaction earlier, but perhaps it can ensure that these short lives have a lasting legacy. Paul Brand, News at 10, Liverpool.
In both the court case and in the inquiry, a long list has emerged of oversights and omissions relating to AR. Sarah's been assessing the missed opportunities, which we now know could have stopped him sooner.
His obsession with violence was well known. From the age of 13, he'd been on the radar of police, mental health and social services. What the teenager did that day was the culmination of years of disturbing behaviour. There had been a merry-go-round of referrals, and no agency took the lead on assessing his risk, with devastating consequences.
There is a shocking failure in this country for the different agencies to communicate with one another, to share information, sometimes because they do not understand that they are perfectly entitled to share information when the public are to be protected.
There were so many red flags, yet mental health services repeatedly failed to recognise the danger, despite 5 years of on and off treatment. The inquiry found that multiple agencies regularly used his autism diagnosis as an explanation, even an excuse for his behaviour, including his violence. And just 6 days before the murders, he was discharged from mental health services with a note stating his risk to others was minimal.
When services realised that there was an autism diagnosis, some of the services stepped back because perhaps it was felt that either he should be treated more compassionately or perhaps the autism wasn't understood.
The signs were there. He had a criminal record at 13. After attacking a child at his former high school with a hockey stick, he was also armed with a knife. As his behaviour escalated, key information wasn't shared.
We must respond, and we must respond with pace and energy to make sure that we are doing as much as we can to prevent a reoccurrence.
And information sharing is at the heart of that, isn't it?
I think information sharing is critical.
And in the years that followed, police were repeatedly called to his home in Lancashire. The inquiry found the most striking missed opportunity was in 2022. He was found carrying a knife on a bus, telling police he wanted to stab people. Instead of being arrested, he was taken home.
To stop him with a knife and then take him home and tell his parents, who clearly had absolutely no control over him whatsoever, to keep the knife out of the way was a very, very foolish thing to do. They should have arrested him, they should have gone to his house, they should have searched his house.
It wasn't until after the attack that police found his hoard of weapons all ordered off the internet. He was referred to the counter-terrorism scheme Prevent 3 times. Teachers found him researching mass school shootings online. Basic failures meant all cases were closed. Now the independent Prevent Commissioner warns there must be more focus on internet use.
It's an ungoverned space. There are no adults in the room. A lot of these young people are really spending all their time on it. And as this report found, the results of that can be very damaging indeed.
Those organisations that failed so badly say they fully accept and apologise for the many missed opportunities. And we may never know why he made this journey and brought horror to Southport that day, but this terrible tragedy was both foreseeable and preventable. Sarah Corker, News at 10.
Let's return to Paul in Liverpool, where the report was published this afternoon. And Paul, there were a litany of failures outlined, but little comfort for those affected by the tragedy.
Yeah, Charlotte, the words failing, failure, failed are used more than 200 times over the course of this lengthy report. It is just really the latter school of the killer, Acorn School, which is singled out as having repeatedly raised concerns to the authorities, but they weren't acted upon. Every safety net thought there would be another safety net, it seems, to catch him, but he fell through every single one of them, including that parental safety net, the responsibility of his mother and father. I understand there is some frustration, actually, among the police that charges probably can't be brought against them because under the law you don't have to report your child to the authorities. That is one recommendation in today's report, that perhaps that should be reviewed. Other recommendations are depressingly familiar from past failures, from past atrocities, like this idea that agencies need to be more joined up. There is a warning again too about the online harms that are damaging our children. This is just phase one of the inquiry. There will be a second phase two looking at the societal problems at large. The families say there has to be action out of all of this. Only one person killed their children, injured others, including 2 adults, but many people, it seems, could have potentially stopped him.
Paul, many thanks. To today's other news now, and not content with unleashing war on Iran, Donald Trump is also embroiled in an unholy war of words, with the Pope, no less. It follows Leo XIV's condemnation of America's role in the conflict. On that, the US has begun its naval blockade in the region. It covers far more than just the Strait of Hormuz. Rather, the entire Iranian coastline, stopping vessels from reaching the country's ports and islands, shown here in red. Yet tonight, the president remained unapologetically fixated on his row with the Vatican.
McDonald. Amid one of the worst ever global energy shocks, a Middle East war and now a religious controversy, the president thought this was the perfect moment for a publicity stunt.
This doesn't look staged, does it?
They're all your favorites.
Fast food to land the message of tax cuts on tips. But this was what everyone was talking about. Donald Trump's post appearing to show him as Jesus. Tonight, it had been removed from his social media as he tried in vain to defend it.
I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor. It's supposed to be me as a doctor, making people better, and I do make people better. I make people a lot better.
Despite his attempts to reassure the world his plan on Iran is working,
I can tell you that we've been called by the other side. They'd like to make a deal very badly. Very badly.
Last warning, last warning.
In the Gulf, this is the reality. A tense standoff between the Iranian and American navies as the United States starts its own blockade of Iranian oil.
If you don't obey my order, you will be targeted. Out.
This is Coalition Warship 121. No challenges attended to you.
Iranian TV broadcast footage of one of its Navy vessels squaring up to an American warship. The rhetoric belligerent, but so far it's not been backed up with hostile action.
I'm ready to open fire on them without any warning.
A marine traffic jam is building up on either side of the Strait of Hormuz. The trickle of ships the Iranians have allowed through has now ended after the US naval blockade started today. But Donald Trump's opened up a new front in his global power flexing, this time against the Vatican, targeting the Pope, who criticised his threat to annihilate the Iranian civilization.
There's nothing to apologize for. He's wrong. And the other thing is he didn't like what we're doing with respect to Iran.
His criticism had previously drawn a restrained but firm pushback from the pontiff as he travelled to North Africa.
I don't want to get into a debate with him. I don't think that the message of the gospel is meant to be abused in the way that some people are doing.
Some worry he's tarnished the great office of the presidency, today adding golden arches to the golden flourishes adorning the Oval Office. His critics accuse him of trivialising his position at a moment the world is looking for real leadership. Dan Rivers, News at 10, Washington.
Well, Joel is here with more. And Joel, a warning tonight from the International Monetary Fund that even if the strait were to reopen, lasting damage has been done.
Yeah, that's right. The IMF is preparing for its spring conference. It's still a hope, of course, that peace will break out, but he's making the point that even when the Strait does reopen, it will take time for oil and gas to flow normally once again. And what the IMF is basically saying is that it's unavoidable now. There will be a global, substantial economic shock of some scale. It began with petrol prices. We'll see food prices expected to rise in the weeks and months ahead. There'll be a shortage of jet fuel, the IMF thinks, this summer, which is likely to affect air travel and tourism. We've already seen mortgage rates surge in a way that's going to take money out of the pockets of hundreds of thousands of households when they come to refinance in the months ahead. Have a look at this. This is one to the price of oil today on the back of news of the failure of talks at the weekend, edging back towards $100 a barrel. The price of gas also rose. Gas, of course, a particular vulnerability for the UK. We use a lot of it to heat our homes. We use it to generate electricity. The Resolution Foundation thinks that the average household in the UK will be £480 worse off over the next year. As a result, the government's under pressure to act. You remember the last government subsidised the energy bills of every single household in the UK 4 years ago when Russia invaded Ukraine. Today, Jeremy Hunt, who was Chancellor back then, said he didn't think this shock was on anything like the same scale, but neither did the British government. Was it in a position to be anything like as generous? Rachel Reeves, you may remember, Charlotte, started this year saying 2026 is going to be the year we turn a corner. President Trump's war in Iran means that looks almost unthinkable now.
Joel, many thanks for taking us through that. Inside Iran, Emma has heard from people living under the fragile 2-week ceasefire. For them, long-lasting peace still feels a long way off, especially after the collapse of face-to-face talks in Islamabad over the weekend, which broke up with neither side anywhere close to reaching a deal.
These are uncertain days. Neither full-scale war nor secure peace. A break in the bombardment has allowed for a return to the more usual rituals of life. And Tehran's Grand Bazaar is busy again.
We want peace. All of us, we want peace. But this situation is I don't know what to say.
There had been a wish, rather than an expectation. The talks may deliver an easing of the sanctions which have contributed to the economic crisis in this country.
Two major wars, as well as internal division, have left their marks on this country. The consequences of war will be challenging, so will the consequences of peace.
It was here in the Grand Bazaar that the protests began as businesses began to struggle. The war has compounded the financial pressures. Business isn't good, Bibi tells me, and says she's several orphan children to care for. At this age, I still have to come here and sit, she says. There is no escaping the human consequences of this war. These are some of the faces of the children killed in an American strike on their school in Minab on the first day.
Everyone wants peace. No one wants the war. War isn't good. We didn't start this war.
This ceasefire has offered something of a respite for those who have seen the worst of this war.
It's so very, very bad things. I can't show his face to you. I can show the face to you, but not film. One of my casualties is there. He's civilian. He's a worker, super worker. But debris of roof had fallen on his face, and the face is ruined totally. Very handsome, young person. Sajjad, he's tailor, and he works.
Fiction.
And he works in his workplace. They repaired the right side, and they made a free flap from here. This is
So you've used skin from the leg in order to fix the side of the
Skin
face?
plus muscle.
Skin and muscle. Yeah.
From here, plastic surgeons.
This is one of Tehran's main hospitals, and it took huge numbers of patients during the bombardment. The staff here had told me that the floor would shake when the bombs started to fall, and they'd run to the windows to look out to see, firstly, whether or not it was their neighbourhood that had been hit, secondly, how far away those hits were, so they could judge just how many patients they would get into the hospital. What was striking when I spoke with one of the senior doctors was his description that they didn't get as many casualties as they thought they would. That was because the nature of the strikes was so intense. Most people died instantly and didn't need to be brought to hospitals. There is no escaping the physical impact either. Rubble in their wake is the American-Israeli calling card. But it's not just their targets suffering damage. The Golestan Palace dates back to the 1700s. It's a UNESCO site, and its beauty has withstood hundreds of years, but not a blast wave. It will be rebuilt, broken shard by broken shard. It's something of a metaphor for this country as it waits to see what the future will bring. Emma Murphy, News at 10, Tehran.
To Hungary now, after Peter Magyar's landslide and landmark election victory last night. He said today he would restore the rule of law, that his government would fight corruption, and he promised a complete change in regime following the end of Viktor Orban's 16-year, increasingly pro-Putin premiership. Little wonder then, celebrations extended far beyond the country's own capital. Brussels and Kyiv each have their own reasons to toast the result.
Walking triumphantly through a crowd that had despaired of ever seeing this day, Peter Magyar, Hungarian flag held aloft, and with it the promise that his country's 16-year-long slide into authoritarianism ends now. I did it my way played on the speakers, and he did, uniting the opposition to throw out Viktor Orban, who had rigged the system in his favour while playing the role of Putin's best friend in Europe. We are the champions, sang the crowd, who erupted in their hundreds of thousands along the banks of the Danube.
For the first time in our life, we are hopeful. Like the last time Fidesz wasn't in power, it was 16 years ago.
It's the best day of our life since I can vote. This is the first time the party is winning, which I vote for.
And will this country be better now?
I hope they're going to have four wonderful years, and they're going to make progress because this country needs it.
At a victory press conference this afternoon, the incoming Prime Minister was blunt about his inheritance. Hungary's in trouble, he said. It's been plundered, looted, betrayed, and turned into the poorest and most corrupt country in the EU. Opposition MPs stood down from Parliament in order to give a single candidate a clear run against Orban. That strategy was spectacularly successful.
We're finally back to where we belong, which is Europe, and finally can get out of Russia's butt, you know, and just get rid of Putin. And
this is a big loss for Putin, isn't it?
I hope so. I think so, because no more Trojan horse for him within the European Union.
And certainly in Brussels, they could hardly contain their delight.
Today, Europe is Hungarian, without any question. The people of Hungary have spoken, and they have reclaimed their European path. It is a victory for fundamental freedoms.
As Viktor Orban left the stage, Ukraine will get its European loan, sanctions on Russia will continue, and both Putin and Trump will be missing their best friend in Europe. And the people of Hungary, they've shown that wannabe autocrats can be ousted by the thing they fear most, the power of voting. James Mason, News at 10, Budapest.
For golfer Rory McIlroy, there was one big difference between his back-to-back Masters wins. Whereas last year his parents were busy in Northern Ireland moving house as it happens, this time they were there at Augusta to see him seal his victory. They didn't exactly go willingly, however. He had to convince them their presence would not curse his luck. But luck and talent were on his side.
And it's 2 in a row for Rory.
A putt to put him in the history books. Augusta is starting to feel like home to Rory McIlroy, Masters champion once again.
I did want to come back here and prove last year wasn't a fluke. It is an absolutely incredible golf tournament. It's so unique in so many ways.
In Hollywood, icons are usually stars of the big screen, but in Hollywood County Down, watching on a smaller one, his boyhood club has its own hometown hero. Savouring every moment of another memorable Masters for McIlroy. For more than 4 hours, they were waiting, hoping for history to be made. Every nail-biting moment, and those that were never in doubt. In what felt like a matter of minutes, it was over.
I was on night shift last year trying to watch snippets of it, and the adrenaline then to see it back in my home club, watching it live with everybody, making do the back-to-back, it was just fantastic.
So proud, so pleased for Rory as well, to come back and to win it, and now another elite club for him to be in.
McIlroy becomes only the 4th person in history to win back-to-back Masters, following in the famous footsteps of Nicklaus, Faldo and Woods. A moment he'll never forget while sharing it alongside those closest to him.
It's really cool to have them here. They missed it last year, and the first thing I wanted to do was fly home to see them, because I obviously wouldn't be sitting up here if it wasn't for them. So, and I had to sort of convince them to come this year, because they thought that the reason that I won last year was because they weren't here. So I said on the putting green, I'm glad that we proved that wrong, so they can keep coming as long as they want.
Another tournament to remember for a golfer who's getting used to wearing that famous green jacket. Stuart Robson, News at 10.
Finally, we've covered before on News at 10 the scientific studies into alpacas in Aberystwyth. Researchers have been investigating how the animals, originally from the Andes, can help to improve the biodiversity of the Welsh uplands and pastures around the world. This time, understanding exactly what the creatures are grazing upon is key, and to that end, the experts have deployed some high-tech equipment. But still, the start of the process requires a more hands-on approach.
These alpacas have swapped the plains of Peru to the lanes of Ceredigion. A journey of scientific importance, because beyond chewing, they also like pooing. DNA from their dung deposited in Wales could help save the environment in their native Peru.
We've got some rushes here, quite different chemically.
Scientists from Aberystwyth University are trying to see if they can tell exactly what has gone in one end from what's come out the other.
By understanding what animals are eating, we can make agriculture more sustainable because we can use grassland more efficiently. But probably more importantly for the communities, particularly in the Andes, we can target grazing management to increase biodiversity.
Right, this is the high-tech bit. Who said science isn't glamorous, eh?
After being baked dry, the samples are bagged, then sent to Lima in Peru, Portugal, and less exotically, Aberystwyth. There, Matthew and his team are seeing if DNA sequencing can do a better job of working out who's eaten what than slower, traditional methods of using microscopes and chemicals.
So in here we've got the amplified barcodes that will tell us what species are present in the alpaca poo, and I'm going to transfer that into our sequencing machine to determine exactly which species were present, whether that's plant or bacteria.
Everything scientists learn, hi everyone, how are you?
Hi there.
Hi.
Is passed on to teams around the world.
It helps manage the coexistence between wildlife, like the vicuña, and livestock, by understanding if they are competing for the same food.
Not just pretty faces, these curious creatures are off for another data dump to do their bit for the environment. Martin Stew, News at 10, Aberystwyth.
And that's it for tonight. Susanna and Ed will be back from 6 a.m. with Good Morning Britain. From all the team, good night. Thanks for watching.
Did we just ask you anything here?